Hey all, JTC here, and today I want to share my first impressions of the Darktide beta. I've been streaming and recording it a lot this past day, and I understandably have a lot to say about the game, and I wanted to put it in a video format to share with everybody else and get everyone's opinions on it as well. How I'm going to be formatting this video is I'm first going to talk about the good aspects of the game, what I think has been done incredibly well, then the neutral aspects, which could be good or bad depending on how you look at it and your opinions overall, and then finally, what I think needs to be improved. Now, quick disclaimer. I have only been playing Darktide for about a day, and the beta doesn't last that much longer. On top of that, I have not seen everything Darktide has to offer yet because the beta does not have everything that's going to be in the full game. Which means that everything that I'm going to say in this video should be taken with a grain of salt because I don't have the full picture yet, and my opinions are absolutely subject to change when the game actually comes out. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the good aspects of the beta. First off, the game visually looks absolutely stunning. Usually, the map designers and the artists at Fat Shark knock it out of the park, and Darktide is absolutely no exception. In fact, it honestly seems like the artists and the level designers poured their heart and their soul into this game. Because, I'll be honest, I have absolutely no experience when it comes to 40K Warhammer at all, but when I walk around the main hub and I walk around all of the different missions, I feel transported into 40K, and I get this really giddy feeling, because I feel like a kid in a candy store when I just walk around the levels, because it's just so awe-inspiring just seeing all those levels. In the same vein, the sound design in the game is absolutely fantastic. Sure, there are little bugs here and there, but when the sound works in the game, it works incredibly well. The firearms feel really meaty and they sound full. The melee sounds squishy and bloody and brutal. The headshot sounds are really, really satisfying. It just works really well together. I don't know what to say about it. Another thing that works really well is the music. I believe Jesper Kid came back and composed the music for Darktide, and he is an incredibly talented composer. I'll never forget, I was fighting in front of one of the elevator holdouts on the Forge level, and I heard an absolute banger of a soundtrack come on behind me as I was hiding from las gunners, and I was playing veteran and like peeking out and returning fire, and I said to my Twitch chat at the time, this is badass, because the music is really, really well designed and fits really well with the game. I feel like a lot of people, just in general, don't understand how difficult it is to make music that meshes really well with what you're basically writing the music for. It's not easy, and Jesper Kid is an absolute genius when it comes to that. And I'm very happy to see that he was able to nail the music on the head again, this time with Darktide. Combat feels really, really good. I love the combat in Darktide because it feels different enough from Vermintide to feel like a brand new experience, yet still similar enough to be familiar and kind of like invoke that warm, fuzzy feeling of familiarity. I would describe the combat in Darktide as floaty, but it's not a bad kind of floaty. I really don't know how to explain it. I just really like how the combat feels. It feels fluid, just like Vermintide, and I think that's the important part. The other thing that I really, really like is the large amount of weapon variety compared to Vermintide. I don't know how many weapons, unique weapons, not repeated weapons, are in Vermintide. I think it's around the 30 to 40 mark, if I'm correct. I kind of pulled that number out of thin air, don't quote me on that, but I do know that Darktide is slated to have 70 plus weapons on release. If I find the tweet they made or the post they made, I'll put it here somewhere, but they have said directly that there's going to be 70 plus weapons on release, and that is absolutely fantastic. Now, how many of those weapons are going to be repeats of others, I have no idea, but I'm hopeful that there's going to be a lot of weapons for us to play with. Next up is the neutral, which may or may not be good depending on how you look at it. Now, personally, I don't have a problem with any of these, but I do know that some people will, which is why I bring them up in the first place. First off, there are a decent amount of reused assets from Vermintide and Darktide. For example, the one-handed sword in Darktide is just the one-handed sword from Vermintide. The chainsword has the exact same attack pattern as Falchion. The Maulers, or the Marauders, or whatever they're called in Darktide, has the same attack patterns as the Chaos Warrior. There are a lot of reused death animations in Darktide, and so on and so forth. Now, I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing because, let's be real guys, Vermintide is not a big game, and 99% of people who play Darktide are not going to recognize the animations. We are because we're Vermintide veterans and we've memorized them by heart, but everyone else isn't, and that's what matters. Next up, not all enemies have obvious sound or visual cues that they've spawned. Some of them do, such as the Poxhound and the Grenade Guy and the Sniper, but other than those, there really isn't any obvious visual cues that enemies have spawned. And that was a very integral part of Vermintide to ensure that the game was actually fair and balanced. This time around, I actually don't think it's that much of a problem, but that's going to be saved for a later video, so we're just going to move on from that. Lastly, though, I think is the most controversial, which is the trading of named characters like Sienna and Saltspire and all of them to nameless characters. I understand why people are upset about this because we lose the ability to empathize with characters and grow with the characters and watch them grow, and Fat Shark loses the ability to humanize these characters, but I actually think it's a fair trade to make because if you think about it, Fat Shark wasn't able to add a lot to Vermintide simply due to lore restrictions. Case in point, the ability to not add any extra winds of magic because humans can only cast one wind of magic, and because of that they couldn't add any others. However, by moving away from named characters to nameless characters, they can just add whatever they want into the game, and therefore there really is no restrictions when it comes to lore. They can add whatever they want, and personally that is a trade that I am willing to make. And then lastly are the things that do need to be fixed before launch. First off, there's a lot of ping, server, and performance issues, but this is a beta, that's going to be fixed, I'm not worried about it. However, right now, snipers and suiciders do a lot of damage regardless of the difficulty you're on, which makes them very unfun to go against. Suiciders are very easy to fix, you just have to reduce the amount of health they have to make them easier to kill or reduce their damage. But snipers are a lot more complicated to fix because if you take away all their damage, they basically just become a nuisance and they're no longer a threat. But if you give them all their damage back, they become incredibly unfun because, surprise, surprise, people don't like being one-shot by something they couldn't see in the first place. I think a way to fix snipers isn't to take away their damage, but to actually reduce the amount of, or increase the amount of time in between shots. Because right now they can shoot like once every 3 or 4 seconds, but if you double that and make them be able to shoot once every like 6 to 8 seconds, I think that would give people a lot more counterplay around snipers and make them so much less frustrating to go against. This complaint might just be a me thing, but I absolutely hate it. Lasguns, the recoil on lasguns isn't always controlled by you, the player. I've noticed it's controlled by the game. Sometimes the recoil from lasguns goes horizontal instead of vertical, and sometimes when you rapid fire lasguns, the recoil suddenly hikes really high for no reason before going back to normal, and that's really frustrating. It's a huge reason of why I hate playing Escape from Tarkov, because the game controls the recoil and not you, and just makes like artificial difficulty, which I don't like. I don't like that. I really want to control my own recoil. I don't want the game to control it for me. And then lastly, I've noticed that if there are a lot of enemies, you can absolutely get stun-locked by the enemies and absolutely deleted. Once more, if I can find it on stream, I'll put it up here. But one of the people that I was playing with in chat peeked their head and got absolutely deleted by like a bunch of ranged guys in less than a second. Absolutely hilarious, but incredibly unfun and not fair, and there should be ways to negate that, or ways around that, or just shouldn't be possible to get absolutely melted in less than a second by a bunch of ranged dudes. Overall though, my experience with the beta has been incredibly positive, and it makes me super excited for the game's release. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe for more Darktide content in the future, and be sure to leave a comment down below telling me what you think about the Darktide beta. See y'all next time!